The Denver Broncos have made moves on the offensive side of the ball to help change what we've seen on the on-field product in the last 7 years. Will this be the year the Denver Broncos offense takes the next step? Well, with the introduction of Russell Wilson, we go through our free agency grades both in-house and out of market. Why is Russell Wilson an A-plus grade for the Denver Broncos? You get that and much more in today's brand new episode, Locked on Broncos.
You are Locked on Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, Broncos Country? Welcome back into a brand new episode, Locked on Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast here on the Locked on NFL Network, your team every day. From the South Stands to the end zone, I'm your host, as always, Cody Roark, joined alongside by my co-host, Sayre, Bedinger. Both of us, we cover the Denver Broncos for the Locked on Network and 9 News Broncos Country. Thank you so much for making Locked on Broncos your first listen of the day every single day. You can get this podcast free and available everywhere you get your podcast in audio format. You can get us here in video on YouTube. All you got to do, and we encourage you, hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications so you never miss out on a day's worth of Denver Broncos news, content, and coverage. Sayre, I'm really excited about today's episode of the show because we're grading the Broncos' offensive moves in free agency. And, of course, we're going to rave about Russell Wilson. We're going to tell Broncos fans why it is an A-plus grade. But first off, let's take a look at some of the in-house options. You want to kick things off on today's episode of the show. Who do we have on tap?
Yeah, Cody, it's a great group. It's a really, kind of an underrated. As I was kind of going through, putting together some of my notes for the show, I was kind of surprised at how positive these grades are. But starting it off with in-house players, we're going to start it off at the quarterback position, players the Broncos retained from last year, starting with Brett Rypien, the backup quarterback, or I suppose third string quarterback.
B. I've got it as a B. You've got it as a B. So this is pretty good. This is above average here, Sayre. Now, why do you have this grade as a B for the Broncos? Look, they brought in one guy, and we'll talk about the out-of-market quarterback backup to Russell Wilson here. They have 2 out-of-market guys at that position now, but they chose to keep one remaining in-house guy who's been with this team for the last several years, Brett Rypien. Like I said, I'm a big Brett Rypien fan.
I think everybody in the building is as well, right? I mean, he's now lasted through a couple coaching staffs, and he's been on, he's been a favored guy for different QBs in that room to kind of be another voice in the room. A lot of people speculate maybe Brett Rypien has a bright future in the coaching realm. So I think this is a huge thing for him, not only to be able to come in and learn from Russell Wilson, to be part of that quarterback room, obviously also Josh Johnson now, who's very well traveled, but for him to kind of absorb everything that he can from those guys and Nathaniel Hackett and Clint Kubiak. I mean, it's all across the board. I feel like it's just a really good fit for Brett Rypien to kind of progress in whatever it is that he's going to end up doing. If he's a lifelong backup NFL quarterback, there's great money to be made there. If he's a future coach in the NFL, obviously there's going to be some great money to be made there eventually as well. So I just feel like you're exactly right. An above average move for the Broncos to bring him back at a nice price.
We see how valuable it is to have more than 2 quarterbacks on your roster. I mean, the Broncos back in 2020 during the whole COVID year, they went through their entire quarterback room, and all of a sudden it prompted the discussion, should the NFL have a mandatory spot for emergency quarterbacks so you never have the Kendall Hinton situation ever again? I like that grade. I'm glad that Brett Rypien is back in the fold here for the Broncos. I'm a huge Rypien fan, like I mentioned earlier. But now let's go to the offensive line here. And this is a player who decided to restructure his contract to come back at a cheaper price and also to help the team out here on the offensive line. Suffered a freak injury right before halftime of the game against the Dallas Cowboys, and we're talking about offensive guard Graham Glasgow. I've got a B. You're giving it a B+. Like I said, I think that for me, the reason I gave this one a B, Sayre, is because of the fact that the Broncos' offensive line depth as is. And look, I'm a big Graham Glasgow fan. Don't get me wrong. However, you have the investment in Netani Muti. You also have Quinn Miners, who we just heard Nathaniel Hackett and George Paton say, hey, we anticipate he's going to be a really good guard for us for quite some time. And you have a big-time contract here coming up for Dalton Reisner. Graham Glasgow coming in. I know we've thrown the idea out there potentially about him maybe competing with Lloyd Cushenberry at center. Why do you give this a B+?
Well, I think, Graham Glasgow was obviously a big money free agent pickup for the Broncos a couple years ago. Remember, right before him, it was Ronald Leary. They just couldn't get anybody at that right guard spot to stay healthy. It was kind of becoming like the right tackle position, just a revolving door there. So you bring Graham Glasgow in, and obviously it hasn't quite worked out the way the Broncos and everybody probably thought it would. He hasn't played necessarily at a Pro Bowl level. I guess that would be kind of, from my perspective, Cody. I know I've gotten in trouble for calling out his play on Twitter before, so I'm going to tread lightly here. But the reason that I'm giving this a high grade is because, number one, I feel like you didn't have to make a dramatic move to get rid of Glasgow this offseason. He was willing to come back, and he's willing to come back and compete, whether that's at center or maybe left guard. I think Quinn Miners, like you mentioned, he's got that right guard spot kind of locked in. So this restructure, though, Cody, opens the door for a potential trade sometime in training camp or before roster cut down time. I feel like this is something that we need to be forward thinking about, maybe even during the draft. If some team doesn't get the guard that they wanted, they're like, hey, let's send a pick to the Broncos, or let's send a future or a player or something. Anything. It could be anything like that. So I feel like this just opens up the possibility, much more palatable in a trade, that contract that he's got now. And I think it works out if he ends up playing well. Now you get him playing well at a discounted rate as well.
Well, let's talk about the next two guys there. I love everything that you said there too, because it gives the Broncos options. And one word that George Paton loves to say, flexibility, which is the number one word in his vocabulary. I love that, especially when it comes to the NFL draft. Let's go through a couple quick ones here. First off, Calvin Anderson coming back, and there's going to be an anticipated three-man competition for right tackle. But I think when we look at Billy Turner's contract, and then we had the introductory press conference yesterday at the UCL Training Center in Inglewood, Colorado, it kind of tells me, okay, hey, this is kind of a big deal here for the Broncos in the offensive line. I'm a big Calvin Anderson fan. I like this move here. I've got my grade ready. I'm giving this one a B+. I see you're giving it a B+ as well. Quick thoughts as to why you gave this one a B+ for Calvin Anderson.
I just like bringing him back. The team has invested quite a bit in developing him, so I think why not bring him back? You've got the opportunity to do so, and I'm pretty sure, Cody, they didn't extend a restricted free agent tender to him. I think they just flat out re-signed him to a 1-year contract, so I think that's nice as well. It gives him maybe a better guarantee or something like that. So I don't know exactly why they did that way when they could have done the restricted free agent route, but either way, I think you get a potential starter, at worst a valuable backup for a really good price. I like that pickup to bring him back.
The best emoji game in the world right there, the face there. Final one here before we get into our next topic of discussion here. I'm a big fan of this one, Andrew Beck. And I've been on record here saying that, hey, I think that in this offense, he could be utilized the way that Kyle Juszczyk is in San Francisco. And I tell you what, it's starting to build some momentum that he could be used in that same manner here. Sayre, I've got my grade here for Andrew Beck. I'm stoked about it. I'm giving it a B+. So are you. Hey, look, you know what? We're in sync here today. I'm not talking Justin Timberlake. We got this down pat on today's episode of the show. I like the Andrew Beck signing. I think what he represents both on and off the field for the Broncos is what they want. He's been a very good blocker. He's been utilized really as a hybrid fullback guy, but now you get to open him up a little bit more in the passing attack here for this Broncos offense, and he's been working with Russ. I'm a big fan of this move.
Same here, Cody. I feel like he has untapped potential, kind of disappeared under Pat Shurmur, but thankfully the Broncos kept him around, kept him on the roster, and I think his best days are ahead. So I'm a fan of this move. If he can do anything even remotely close to Kyle Juszczyk, I am for it. So I think it's a really great move to bring him back.
We're very happy, campers, in Broncos Country. And hey, Broncos Country, let us know what you think about the in-house grades here for the Denver Broncos. Brett Rypien, Graham Glasgow, Calvin Anderson, and Andrew Beck all returning to the Broncos in 2022. But coming up here in just a moment, Sayre and I, we're going to dive into the Russell Wilson acquisition and tell you why we believe it is an A+ here for this Broncos team and what it means going forward, plus some of the other moves. You get that and much more coming up here in just a moment. But before we do that, let me tell you about Built Bar, the sponsor of today's episode, Locked On Broncos. And folks, I know that we all love chocolate sometimes, for the most part, right? And for me, I love being healthy. And when I can combine my love for chocolate and also being healthy into one thing, you know what I get? I get a Built Bar. They have 9 amazing original flavors, including the occasional limited time flavor that you can get at Built.com here today. Plus, if you need a little bit of extra fuel to help get yourself through your day, every single day, your workout, or whether you're at work in the afternoon, each Built Bar contains 17 grams of protein, 130 calories, and only 4 grams of sugar. Check it out today by going to Built.com. And when you go to checkout, make sure you use promo code code LOCKED15. That is one word together, LOCKED15, and that's going to get you 15% off your next order at build.com. And an additional thing, make sure you tweet Sayre Bedinger and myself at Cody Roark NFL at Sayre Bedinger what flavor of Built Bar you love and that you order. We'll retweet it on our Twitter accounts. Check it out today at build.com. Just a reminder, Broncos Country, as we continue on in the second half action on today's episode, Locked On Broncos, thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day. Outside of that, make sure you're also following the Locked On NFL YouTube channel. It's got Locked On's experts covering the biggest stories around the NFL every Monday through Friday in less than 30 minutes, and it is free and available everywhere you get your podcast, Locked On NFL. Sayre, let's waste no time getting into the grades here for the Broncos' external free agency acquisitions, and I feel like we would be remiss if we do not talk about arguably, outside of Peyton Manning, the biggest free agency signing in Broncos franchise history. It is Russell Wilson, and we said it here in the show. We're going to tell you why this is an A+. So I guess we're going to give our grade away here right now. I'm holding up my board. I'm giving this an A+. You are as well, and I think a majority of Broncos Country is as well. And it's not just the hype, Sayre. The reason I think that Russell Wilson is an A+ signing here for this Denver Broncos team is because he is already, without there being an official date inside the office within team structure, he is orchestrating moves that will make this team better. We've seen him working with Courtland Sutton, Tim Patrick, KJ Hamler, Albert O, Andrew Beck, Josh Johnson, Brett Rypien, Lloyd Cushenberry snap it to him. And guess what? This is going to excite Broncos Country. We just saw him and Jerry Jeudy working together at night, working on the back shoulder, working on the post, working on that route integrity and just that chemistry that they're getting between each other. Russell Wilson's impact is already being felt in Dove Valley. This is an A+ signing, and it could change the trajectory of this Broncos football team in 2022 and beyond.
And I believe it will, fully. I completely believe what you just said. It's the best pickup the Broncos have made since Peyton Manning. One of the best offseason moves, I think, of any NFL team ever. I don't know if there's a bigger trade that I can think of. I know a lot of people could give examples of trades that maybe included some more gaudy draft picks or whatever, including the Deshaun Watson deal. But as far as getting a player in the building that is going to be a culture changer for the better, and somebody that, I mean, frankly, how often do you acquire legendary future Hall of Fame quarterbacks in trades? I mean, it just doesn't happen in the NFL. I know that's pretty common in the NBA to see superstars get traded from here to there, which is so disappointing. It's why I don't really watch a lot of NBA, Cody. But I think that for the NFL, like, it's so different. It's such a different feeling because one player can truly change the entire trajectory of your franchise. And Russell Wilson, I expect him to do that for the Denver Broncos. I know that's why a lot of people are just now tuning into the show, because now the Broncos have a quarterback and they're like, what's going to happen next? Who's joining Russell Wilson in Denver? Like, why is this going to be so great? Like, we're going to be anticipating this for the next 5.5 months here, waiting for Russell Wilson's debut. And I think that that is exactly why you go out and make a move like this. George Paton, get the statue plans all started up, get some artists to like render it all out. We're going to have a statue of George Paton outside of the Broncos stadium someday because of this move.
I'm excited about it, and I think you make some great points. Just I think anytime you could bring in one person, like we talk about like basketball, you can have one player who's just the star, right? You could have the Steph Currys, you could have the Nikola Jokic's, which you should check out the Locked On Nuggets podcast if you are a Denver Nuggets fan here on the Locked On Podcast Network. In basketball, it's different because one guy can do a lot for a basketball team. And it's very hard to find a guy that can do a lot for a football team. One guy. And look, there's transformational guys that come in. Russell Wilson is that guy. Peyton Manning was that guy. Tom Brady has been that guy for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The list goes on and on. Patrick Mahomes, the Justin Herberts. Take those guys off these teams, and all of a sudden it's mediocrity. It's wondering what the heck the team is going to do next. That's the power of a franchise quarterback. And we're excited. If you're a brand new Broncos fan or you're just now finding the show because of excitement in Broncos country, thank you so much. We appreciate you. We hope we get to keep you around here all year long, every single weekday. We got you covered here, Locked On Broncos. Let's get to the next signing here because everyone's like, okay, now you got Russell Wilson. The Broncos need to protect him with the offensive line, and they need to get tackle help, especially with the pass rushers inside the AFC West. They go out and they get Billy Turner, who was introduced to the media yesterday. Sayre, I've got my grade for this. I think that this is a signing that actually bode well for my understanding and kind of my expectations. And I'm glad that this was a signing. I'm giving it an A grade here for the Denver Broncos. I think Billy Turner, from what we've seen too, and when you see him healthy, and I just go back to the praise that Aaron Rodgers had saying, hey, Billy Turner does so much. He plays guard, he plays right tackle, he plays left tackle. He can play left guard too if you need him to. He can play at any position if you have an injury occur there and you need some continuity in the offensive line. But more importantly, what impressed me about Billy Turner, Sayre, was the fact that he faced some of the NFL's best pass rushers and held his own in one-on-one reps. He's got really good technique. I'm excited to see what he could do against these AFC West pass rushers and also the NFC West, who, look, the Broncos are going to face this upcoming season. I'm glad that is an A there. Your thoughts on Billy Turner, and then we'll talk about Tom Compton here in terms of depth here for this Broncos football team.
Absolutely. In the show notes, I had B+, but while we were just kind of just getting ready to give his grade, I bumped it up to an A. The more I think about the contract, Cody, the more I love this pickup for the Denver Broncos. And I think it's a scheme fit. I mean, he's obviously been with Nathaniel Hackett the last few years, and he absolutely loves Nathaniel Hackett. If you get a chance to go back and listen to his press conference, you'll hear a lot of why he really loves Nathaniel Hackett, just as a human being, not necessarily just as a coach, which is so great to hear, because that is such a difference. I mean, yeah, Vic Fangio is a great football mind, and all due respect to him, but it was just a different feeling, a different vibe when he was around. I love what we're hearing from these players that have worked with Nathaniel Hackett so far. So I love the move from that perspective. And like you said, he can play anywhere on the offensive line. He even said during his press conference, I'll play center if they ask me to play center. So all 5 spots on the offensive line. We used to need 22 Janos on the team. Now we need like 5 Billy Turners so that we can have an entire offensive line of guys that have that flexibility that you talked about earlier.
I like that. We have a couple more guys to get through on the offensive side of the ball here. Tom Compton, a depth piece in terms of this offensive scheme. I'm giving this grade here, Sayre. I'm handing this one out as a B, as in Bronco, because Tom Compton understands this system, and you gave it a B as well. I love that. He understands this system in terms of what you want, and let's say one of those injuries, let's say an injury happens on the offensive line, and you absolutely need to move Billy Turner to another position. Okay, you might have confidence in either Calvin Anderson or Tom Compton bumping over to that right tackle spot there. You have options, and I think for the Broncos too, I think you'll see them keep 3 right tackles because Calvin provides value as a swing left or right tackle. Tom Compton can play guard and he can play tackle, and then Billy Turner can play every position on the offensive line. I think those 3 guys are roster locks here. That is a B grade. I see you gave it that. I know we have a couple more guys to get to here, but let's talk about Eric Tomlinson, the tight end here, the tight end pickup from Baltimore. Now, is he going to be more than an option as just a blocking guy? Is he going to be a receiving threat? I don't anticipate, though. One thing Nathaniel Hackett said is that now Albert Okwuegbunam is going to be flexed out more, which means he's not going to be that inline guy. I like that from this standpoint. Now, Sayre, when it comes to Eric Tomlinson, the grade that I have for him here, plain and simple, I'm going to hand it out here. It is a C+ grade here for the Broncos. Doesn't necessarily move the needle for them inside the AFC West, but it gives them that blocking option, which, as we said a little bit earlier, will allow Albert O to thrive a little bit more on the outside and also in the slot. And he's going to amplify his role a little bit within the offense as a more pass-catching tight end. I don't think he's going to have much involvement in the pass catching game. Maybe in the red zone, we might see that. So there is that to consider. Another move that they made here in terms of bringing in a backup quarterback, that was really after the Russell Wilson trade. We're like, hey, they need a backup. Who's going to be the backup quarterback? They bring in Josh Johnson. I'm giving this a B-. You're giving it a B. Tell me why Josh Johnson is a B grade for you, Sayre.
I think he's got obviously a lot of experience in professional football, whether it's the NFL or other professional leagues that he's been part of. And so I just really like the experience factor. I like the athleticism. I like what we saw from him last season, frankly, with the Baltimore Ravens and the New York Jets. I mean, he's obviously capable of coming in there even ice cold. I mean, he wasn't part of those teams necessarily all throughout training camp and doing all the work with them. So for the fact that he's able to kind of come in and give you a strong performance and just go out there and play, I think that's really beneficial for the Denver Broncos. I think he's going to be a valuable asset to that quarterback room.
I like the options there. Broncos Country, do you agree with the grades that we've handed out for George Paton's moves and the external free agency? Is Russell Wilson an A+ in your opinion, the way it is for us? Let us know in the comment section down below. But coming up here in just a moment, both Sayre, Bedinger, and myself, we're going to dive into why both running back and tight end are still significant needs for this Broncos football team going into 2022. Is what they have enough right now? We debate and we answer that coming up here in just a moment. But before we do that, let me tell you about the other sponsor. Today's episode, Lockdown Broncos. It's our good friends over there, rockauto.com. And if you need anything for your vehicle rockauto.com. They have everything that you could be looking for, whether it's brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, or even brand new carpet for your vehicle. Whether you have a project in the garage that you're working on, or if it's for your daily driver there. It doesn't matter if you're a professional or a do-it-yourselfer. rockauto.com always has prices that are reliably low for everybody. You don't have to spend 30%, 50%, or 100% more at any local chain auto parts store or car dealership when you have rockauto.com at home and in your pocket. And they've been serving auto parts customers online for over 20 years. So right now, go to rockauto.com to see all the parts available for your car or truck. Write Lockdown Broncos in there. How did you hear about us box so that they know that we sent you? Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. As we jump into the fourth quarter on today's episode, Lockdown Broncos, once again, Broncos Country, thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day every single day. Lockdown Broncos is your daily Denver Broncos news, content, and analysis that you can't get anywhere else except here. We appreciate you tuning in here today. The Denver Broncos still have some needs remaining here on the offensive side of the ball. Sayre, my friend, hey, look, let's take a look at tight end. Is Albert Okwuegbunam a satisfactory player to pencil in as tight end one? I know that's something that we've discussed here. I want to get your thoughts on why maybe tight end is still a little bit of an issue here for this team before the season starts.
Yeah, I think with Albert Cody, it's just the ACL from his rookie season, right? That you kind of have in the back of your mind, and also some of the drops issues that he has had. Not necessarily he's not dropping passes in bulk, but he is dropping some passes at some really poor times. Not that there's a good time to drop a pass, but maybe if you're up like 30 points and you drop a pass, people are not going to really care about it so much, when you have an opportunity to score downfield against the Baltimore Ravens and actually maybe make a play there. So I feel like just with Alberto, he's young, he's got plenty of upside. I loved him in the draft. I remember you and I were talking that day that the Broncos drafted him on this show, and I was kind of just hanging out with you while we watched the draft. So I'm high on Alberto, but I just thought this tight end free agent class was so deep. And some guys are going for prices that are just making me pull my hair out sometimes, Cody, especially guys like OJ Howard going for less than $5 million. And just, there's so many players out there that are signing for these 1 or 2 year deals that are so team friendly. So I feel like the Broncos maybe missed an opportunity there. We'll see what they do in the NFL draft, but they've also really been inactive at the running back position, Cody. And I know they haven't brought back a player that has started for them the last couple seasons. Talk to us about the running back position and what the Broncos are doing there with Melvin Gordon.
I think the perception of running back right now is that it's still a little bit of a hole here for the Broncos because, look, Javonte Williams is going to be the premier back for this team going into 2022. There's no way he's going to play second fiddle or be the backup. He was drafted to be the guy, and he's overtaken Melvin Gordon. Now, granted, look, they had equal carries in 2021 and 203 apiece there. There's nothing wrong with that, but you also know, too, Javonte Williams is not a 27 carry guy per game, and we've even seen Nathaniel Hackett and George Paton talk about you have to have balance. You have to have a multitude of different guys here that can split carries because it's a long season and you need guys, and you have guys that have different skill sets. So, while Melvin Gordon, that door is not fully closed just yet, Sayre, for the Broncos, a lot's going to be contingent upon Melvin's market, which I imagine at this point has not formulated the way that he had hoped for when we're seeing some of these other players go for some interesting deals here. He is one of those guys that is still available that I feel like can still play at a high level. Would he be okay coming back to Denver and maybe splitting carries once again with Javonte? He wants to be the premier guy, but if that's the deal breaker, then I don't think he'll be back, which then points our focus to, do the Broncos look in the NFL draft here to add additional running back talent? This is a fairly deep running back class, and there's one player I like out of Arizona State, Rachaad White. I would love the Broncos to maybe take a look at him. He's a speedy guy, athletic pass catcher out of the backfield. But I also want to remind Broncos Country, there is Mike Boone who's still on the roster, and when Melvin Gordon missed against Kansas City, we saw Javonte Williams and Mike Boone go crazy against the Chiefs. I'm not opposed to seeing that again. But then we talk about you need to have a stable of running backs. Well, Sayre, guess who's still on the roster right now for this Broncos team? Damari Crockett, who I am a huge fan of. I like some of the flashes we saw from him in the preseason. Could they go with a three-man rotation with maybe some lesser-known guys like the Mike Boones, Damari Crockett's? Everyone knows who Javonte is. There is that. But let's even throw something interesting out here too, a wild card. Sayre, you can never have enough wide receivers here for the Denver Broncos, especially if you lose a guy to an injury. Are there any guys out there that maybe you have your eye on that, hey, you know what, Denver, kick the tires on this guy and maybe see what he could do?
I'm saying go after a guy like Will Fuller. I think he's the epitome of a dart throw in free agency. And right now the wide receiver market is just really dried up. I mean, that's where teams seemingly put all their focus. And I just don't see the Broncos going after a Jarvis Landry or a Julio Jones or AJ Green or anything like that. But I think a player like Will Fuller playing with Russell Wilson, who likes to push the ball deep downfield, I feel like that's an opportunity. We saw what happens when players get injured last season. We lost 2 guys early in the season, and that really crushed the Denver Broncos. I think that, that's obviously why I would maybe pursue a potential free agent wide receiver, but also you got the NFL draft, you got reserve future guys, you got plenty of opportunities. So, but Will Fuller, if the price is right, I feel like that's a really intriguing fit with Russ's ability to throw that deep ball. You get a guy out there who's one of the best catchers of the deep ball in football.
Will Fuller, come on down. The price is right, according to Sayre, Bedinger. And hey, we'll see if the Broncos make any more moves in NFL free agency now that the market has dried up a little bit, or if they take a look in this year's NFL draft. Once again, I just want to thank the Broncos Country so much for making Locked On Broncos their first listen of the day every single day. Now, for your second listen of the day, make sure you go check out the Locked On NFL Draft podcast hosted by Ryan Tracy and former NFL cornerback Eric Crockers. They bring the NFL draft to life every single day with insight and analysis on all things college football, prospects, and NFL front offices. You can get that free and available everywhere you get your podcast. And Croc, look, if you could find a way to get the Broncos back into round 1, I want to see what your proposal is, how you're going to make it happen. Make sure everybody in Broncos Country checks out the Locked On NFL Draft podcast here on YouTube and also their favorite podcast providers. But with that said, that will wrap up today's episode of the show. On tomorrow's episode, Locked On Broncos, and throughout the week, Sayre, Bedinger, and myself, we're going to dive into some of the positional aspects. We're going to do a comparative analysis of the Broncos versus other teams inside the AFC West. You get that value much more on tomorrow's episode, Locked On